So for those of you who weren't able to make the second hour last week, we did go through some more advanced kind of functionality. We did even an overview of Grasshopper. So if you have the recording, then, you know, probably it will be interesting to try and go over. So we did enough modeling in the past 5 sessions that I thought, you know, it would be a good time to do a little bit of rendering and you know, layout 2D drawings. We did a little bit of visualization. Concept visualization and concept 2D drawings, but there is more to that area that is supported by Rhino 6, and there is even more modeling and rendering support in Rhino 7, the next version of Rhino that is right now in beta. So it's you know, it's approaching you know, where it might be you know, very mature for release. Now, we did learn how to set up some of the materials by layer. So for example, for the roof, we, under the material in the layer, if you recall, we were able to assign some kind of simple materials. You know, this is a quick way for concepts to apply some materials, and this is a pre-canned or pre-configured materials, the glass, the metal, the paint, and you know, just a few parameters to control, like the color in this case of the plaster. You know, and in the case of glass, you can you know, control more or different parameters. If you want to go more in depth with the kind of settings, you can just select custom from there, and then all the different material settings are here for you to edit if you want to go that way. Now, this one is just you know, let's go back to the paint one. For more advanced renderings, you might want to add some textures. You want to, you know, add some environments. You know, have, you know, be able to create a more, you know, realistic renderings for your model. And so the first one, the first part of today's session, we will try to go and have a more advanced Rhino rendering settings. So in around page 80, I think, in the guide, there is the advanced visualization. And you can open the model that I sent you as a reply to today's session email. And it has the 508 underscore detailed visualization. I tried to compress it so I saved it as a small file, save as small basically, and this strips the model from all the render meshes and only save the basic geometry. So when you first open it and you try to, for example, do ghosted, it will take a little bit of time to build all the meshes for the objects. And this is a great way to share your model as, you know, compressed and small. So the first thing you can do is basically save small, as I mentioned, and then after that you zip it. And the size went down from 30 megabyte to 2 megabytes. So the difference is huge. This is where the bulk of the data is in the render meshes of the objects. So So, you know, if you have all opened the model, then you can just try to kind of go ghosted and then render. Just it will take a little bit of time for it to update, but yeah. Now, one of the important things related to the scene you are looking at is the lens length. By default, if you click anywhere in the scene here and go under properties, right? The properties will give you the information about the viewport itself, and you know the title, and you know some information. But most you know of interest to us here is the camera, and specifically the lens length. It is by default set up to 50, which is more of how you visualize things on objects on a table. So if you have a model on a table, this is how you look at it. But if you want to experience it as a building and you are a spectator of the building itself, it is better to try to set it more to the 35 for the lens length, and press enter. And now when you approach the building, it is actually viewed or experienced more like a building rather than as an object. So this is one of the settings you want to keep an eye on. And you can experiment for as low as maybe even 15. Where you can start to have a more dramatic kind of perspective effect based on the lens length. 35 is the standard for architectural models, so but you are welcome to experience or experiment with other lens length. So that's the first setting. The thing about the lens length or the for the particular view, as you recall, if you have the named views opened. Remember how we actually saved some of these named views? I can resave some of them to have or include the new lens length that we have. So I can save this view to be, for example, the back perspective. So I'll go save and I'll call it back. So I'm overwriting it basically, and I'll go OK. And do you want to replace it? Yes. Now if I go to the entrance perspective, so I'm just changing my view to the other view. And as you recall, I have enabled the animation, so the transition between one view to the next is done as an animation. As you can see, this perspective actually is the lens length is 50. I'm going to set it back to 35 here, and I'll have also a little bit of a close-up here, perhaps from the other angle here. So we will see a different part of the model. And I will go ahead and save that. And again, you just click save. And yes. Now, both my views that I have saved for the back perspective and entrance perspective, they both are, you know, they preserve their lens length setting. And they actually even can, you know, save your C-plane and other information. So, and I think even which layers are on or off in the view. If I am not mistaken. So there's quite a bit that you can save with your view and be able to kind of come back to it if, you know, just by double clicking on the named view. This is quite useful to do that, just like what we had with the seaplanes, which is extremely useful to have seaplanes that are particular to your model. It's good to have views that are particular to your model. If you say wanted to have a back elevation, a good way to create a view, and I had a question from a student about it, is to go ahead and change your seaplane to front. and then call plan command. And this way you have a parallel view that is looking at your model from the back of it. And this one is a parallel view. This is why the lens length is grayed out here in the camera. But you can save that view. Maybe I can change the C-plane to top, or keep it as a front. It depends on what you're looking for before saving it as a named view. So I'm going to create a back elevation view and say OK. And as you can see that the new view has been created for me. So if I go back to the back view, it goes to the perspective view. Notice that the animation is carried out between the perspective views, but if I transition back, as you can see, the C-plane is also preserved and remembered here. Let me see if I can do also an animation setting for it. And I don't want the transition to be quite slow, maybe just 50 frames. And let's see if that actually, it did not. So I guess if it is a parallel view, it doesn't really transition with an animation. So that's how it is. So again, so you can have a side view as well. So we can set up the side and go plan. And this shows the side view of our building. And we can just say, okay, I want to save that also in my named view. Save, and we can say side elevation. This is very useful because when we go to paper space, when we do the layout, it will be very easy to transition from or to set up any of your views very quickly because you have it saved in your named views. So again, this is our these are the different views that we have here that we have set up in the named views. I hope this is straightforward because we've done that before, but this is as far as goes with the named views. When it comes to setting up your materials, you might want to turn on the material panel, and we have some material already set up. If you don't have the panel on, just click on the gear at the corner and just check the materials checkbox here. Right. So now, if you want to set up a new material, and let me first change my view to be the back perspective, and right now, there are, if you go rendered, all the material is taken from the layers themselves. So because of the layer, there is a plaster layer for the roof, and it's orange, and this is what I'm seeing. But I can assign material to specific objects, and that take a precedent over the layer assignment for that particular object. So under the materials, we can create some new materials. For example, let's create, we already done the glass actually here. So we have a glass already created. So that's for this step. But we can create also, once you create a material, you can actually click on it and call it something else. So if you want it to become Windows, you call it Windows. Glass 1, if you don't need it anymore, just delete, right mouse click on it, the material, and delete it. So yes, and now we have only one material for all the windows. So this is how you can organize all the different materials you have. I have actually glass 2 and glass 3, so I'm going to just clean up some of these materials. And apparently that glass 2 and 3 has been applied to some of the windows here, and this is why now they are not really having any kind of, they don't look, transparent. And if we go back to the layers, you'll see where did we put all the windows, the openings, and this is the glass. So if you turn it off, this is all the glass. So now we can assign the glass back to that layer and click on it. And right now we can, instead of default material, just go down and select windows. And the color of the windows here is orange, which is gonna, perhaps I want to go back to white. And you can just change the clarity to how clear or how frosted you want it to be. And as you can see that now I can see through the windows here when I applied it. Now you can you are not limited to the material that is by default. When you click here, this is just some of the default materials there. You are able to add more types, and so the way to do that, let me just cancel this and just go back to the material tab here. And you can go in the menu, you can say create a new material. Okay. So, and there you can click on more types, and it will open this window where you can, either select from here, start from existing, or just go open, import from file, or do a custom material. So if you go import from file, Rhino ships with some material that has textures and all sorts of standard or imported material. So it's a material library. You can have obviously import your own material, but under architectural, for example, and under walls, you can go CMU and you can select, concrete blocks. Open. Now this material has been added to my material panel, and now I can apply it to any objects or apply it to any layer that I choose. So one way to apply it to an object, you can drag it and drop it to an object and say, I want to assign it there. So this is now assigned all the blocks material, which has a texture to it as well, as you can see. Or I can assign it to a layer. So multiple ways to do it. You can, select an object, and then you go to the material and right-click, and you can assign to selected objects. It's just different ways to do the same thing. Now, if you want to look at the material a little bit, let me take the properties out and add it as a tab there. So this way we can have the properties here, but can use the whole tab here. Now, I have the concrete blocks material down here. And as you can see, there are lots of settings there. Let me see if I can just adjust that a little bit, because I probably don't want the preview to be so much. So now for my concrete material here, this one, the concrete blocks. And this is a preview for it, but this is the different settings in relation to that particular material. You can do some adjustments there. For example, you can adjust the color. You can adjust the scale of the bump mapping. So we can click on the bump here, and you can see more details, which is related to the size of it. So if you want the size of, change the sizes of the blocks, and they are linked here, you can edit this setting. Okay, and you see all these detailed here as well on the side. For example, in this part of the manual, it shows you really these blocks and how you can edit those, and and you can also adjust the style based on the form that you have. And for this more straight kind of walls, the WCS, the box style works best, but we can definitely change the scale here, or the sizes of the blocks or the rotation of it. So this is where you can adjust the details of your texture map. And there are some links, especially at the beginning of the part 1 of the manual, to 4 or 5 different tutorials specific to materials that you can go in more depth there. But this is the basic control that you would want to look into if you need to make any adjustment to any of your materials. So that was the concrete blocks, right? Again, the colors, the some of the other the glows, and all these appropriately assigned and set up for that particular texture or material, but you can edit it. So this is as far as how materials are created, how custom materials you can bring. You can certainly experiment with more material you can bring. So this is the concrete box. Let me just go down a little bit so that we can add other material. So import from material library. Again, we can have more flooring or types. We can go wood, and then dark wood or light, open. And then we can use that to assign it to the floors. Let's just use by layer here, for example. So if we have, there is the interior doors, for example. So let's just use the wood that we just create or brought the light reflective, and use it for that particular layer. So the interior doors here, did we use this? Yeah. So where are my interior doors? Right click, select objects, we don't have objects because the interior doors, the doors themselves are not really in the main. So no matter that I added the material to the wrong layer here, I should have added it to the doors themselves, which is right now is assigned a plaster. So instead, I'm going to use my my wooden doors. And as you can see, this has updated to be that particular material. So again, you know, you can add all sorts of materials. I'll add another one for the flooring. Import from material library, maybe ceramic, maybe, I don't know, stoneware. And you can see that this, you can drag and drop into the floors. Just one thing is some of our objects, like these slabs, they have two sides to them. One of them can be the roof and one of them can be the floor. So if you want to apply different material, you can by shift and control, click to select the top face only, and we can drag and drop the material to the selected object. Actually, that's not a good way to do it. What you can do is right-click on the stoneware and then say assign to selected objects. So assign to objects, and that assigned it to the floor, but it doesn't assign it to the ceiling. If you let me zoom selected. So it assigned it to the floors. It didn't assign it to the ceiling. You can assign different materials. So basically, this is assigning material to a face of a poly surface. And instead of having to explode the poly surface and assign different material to different surfaces, this functionality is really helpful to do that, to assign to the floors. We can do the same thing to the other lower level. So shift control down, select your poly surface face, which is this one, right? And right-click on the stoneware and say assign to object. And now this actually assigned it to this outer one, undo. I actually want it to be assigned to this particular surface. Right-click, shift and control down, right-click on stoneware, assign to objects, and now it assigned it to the object. I can also add some organic material. So I'll go import from material library, and under organic, I can get a grass, and I can get grass bright, open. And now I have a grass where I can drag and drop to the and assign it to my site. So as you can see, we slowly can assign either through layers or to objects and start to build some kind of materials to the material library. There's one thing to notice, like in some of the objects we have are blocks. For example, this is actually a block. And the way to assign material in a blocks, you need to edit the block itself. So you have to go block, edit, and you go and say, you know, you'd want to add the material to the block itself. Was it this one that we actually did? Yeah. So I can add whatever the material it is. I can assign it to it and go OK. And that updates everything. That updates all the instances of the blocks that you have created. And that's another advantage of using blocks, really, is to be able to, you know, do any sort of editing, but at the same time, you can also start to apply materials this way. So this is really all there is to adding materials. It's a matter of editing and the different ways. Is basically to assign the material to a layer, to assign it to object, to assign it to sub-object, and there are different ways to do all of those as we have explored. And this part explains how the blocks are updated as well. All right. Any questions at this point? As you can see, the materials are best seen in rendered views, and this is why I'm using the rendered view. The rendered view is a working view as well, so you can select objects and you can navigate through your model, and that makes it a lot more easy. One material that I think we should update here is with the roof, and we can make it metal. So what I'll do is I add a standard metal material, and I'll just add some texture to it, and I'll use the hatch texture. And this is just a simple metal material, and I can change the color of it if I want to, to make it more silver or bronze. But the way to apply the material is to just maybe perhaps we can do it to the layer itself. So we have the roof, which is, where is my roof? These are the partitions, the doors, the exterior doors, the openings. Okay, let me select the poly surface and see under properties, it's the roof. I'm not seeing, oh, there it is. That's the roof. Right now it's the plaster. And instead of the plaster, I'm going to go ahead and select my metal. And what did I call it? Can't remember anymore. Was it metal one? Yes, that's the one. I can change that, the name of it to be, instead of metal one, I'll call it roof so that I can recognize it. Okay, so now my roof is that metal. If I just close up a little bit, you can see that this is the, but it is very, very reflective. So as you can see here, and there is nothing interesting that is that it is reflecting. So we will just do a little bit of an update here on page 83 and 84 of the guide if you want to go back and check that. This part was the where I used the metal, but I changed the texture to be the hatch, the hatch. And one of the other things you can do is in the rendering panel. So if you haven't have it open yet, also in the gear under rendering, that will open the rendering panel, which has some additional settings that could be useful to control your rendering. We're not interested in all of it. We're just interested in some of it to help us. The sun is useful for an exterior. So if this is not checked, you check the sun, and you can click on the sun setting to see, which part of the world you are, and you can, specify the location. Here is set to Seattle, Washington, but you can also change the time of the day or the to be set to a daytime or a nighttime depending on your setting. So this is for the sun, and you can change the position and all that other settings related to the sun. So turn on the sun is one of the things that is useful to do in the material, in the rendering panel. some of the other things that you can do is to instead of the, under the backdrop, instead of solid color, try to create a gradient, and perhaps you can make it, sort of like the sky. So you can just start with certain color here. Depend how bright you want it to be. And the other color could be set to white. So you have a gradual gradient in the backdrop of the rendering from blue to white, and that helps with the background as well. So this is another setting that you would want to do. So the sun, and also to be able to do the gradient here. Okay. So what are some of the other things you can do? In the rendering panel, you can use a reflection environment as the visible backdrop. So, you can do the gradient, but you can also use an environment. And the environment is chosen by selecting the 360 here. I'll use the gradient here, but only in the reflection I'm going to use an environment. And this will not affect the background, but affects what reflects off your roof. So instead of studio, you click on the pencil here, and then instead of basic environment, you just go and do more types, and you can open, and Rhino comes with also some environments, and you can choose, for example, the Mount Monadnock in New Hampshire, and say open, and you can change the angle as well of the reflection, and go OK. And as you can see that the reflection off of your roof has changed, and it becomes a little bit more interesting than if you are not reflecting anything. As you can see here, there is a scenery or mountains surrounding, and start to reflect off of your metal roof and make it a lot more interesting in terms of rendering than if you haven't used the environment. This is basically the main settings that you would want to go through to create a reasonably good rendering. The one thing is that you keep an eye on is that we are using rendered mode, but rendered mode is and it differs from the ray traced, where there is more. It really follows the light and how it reflects in a secondary reflections of the surfaces. In the rendered mode, it's very quick, but it doesn't really capture all the details of the rendering that you have, and the ray traced is create more realistic and photorealistic kind of renderings, but also is also more affected by all your light settings as well. So it takes time for the ray trace to generate. And as you can see, it's, if you kind of observe the bottom of it, it says ray trace cycles rendering. And it basically, that's the time that's lapsing to gradually try to calculate and figure out all the different, to calculate the scene basically. And it sometimes take time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to really generate a good quality rendering. Could be anywhere between 3 minutes and 30 minutes, depending on you know, what you're looking for. And this one, for example, is 30 minutes, 33 minutes to get a higher quality rendering here. So also, if you go under render, and if you click render, that's also going to open a separate window, and it's going to go through the same process pretty much to start generating the rendered scene for you. And it takes some time, so that's one of the things is to start to go transition from a rendered mode to a ray traced mode. That's basically the difference. While we're waiting for that render to create, you probably should go back to the rendered view here, and some of the other options that you can explore here is to under the if you click anywhere in your scene and you are in the properties, you have an option for the focal blur. And this one really helps with the rendering to focus it on certain area of interest. So if you want to really focus on, say, for example, that partition, that surface, you can select it, you know, a point on it to be your focal focal point. So you can set it to manual focal, and you can click on the on a point where it will allow you to select a point in your scene that you say, this is my focal point here, or part of the roof itself. So you say, okay, this is my focal point. And once you select your focal point, the rest of the model will be a little bit more blurry, and the focal point becomes a little bit more crisp. And this is how the you know, how the focal calculation happens. And so the aperture, you know, there are some recommended settings here, as you can see there. You can follow those, and then you generate ray traced. And this is only visible on ray traced mode, so it can generate much more effective renderings this way. To save your ray traced model or any model that you have rendered, the best way to do that is to basically use view capture command. So there is view capture to file, and view capture to file allows you to you know, just save the viewport itself, and that's the kind of resolution. And it will really take exactly the same aspect ratio, whatever is showing in your viewport. This is what you will be saving. But you have the option to change the scale as well. So you can, you know, if the scale is 1, it's just going to do the same resolution that you have there. So if you change the scale to 2 or 3, as you can see, the resolution updates here down there, and it will really create a better resolution image for you. So if you will end up printing it, you can increase the scale, and this way you can have a better images for your final presentation. Okay. And you can save it on the desktop and call it, you know, house 1, and save it as any of the image formats, and save it. And then you can open it and access the image after that. An important topic related to rendering is the lighting. The lighting is specifically important for interior scenes. And as you can see here, between the top and the bottom, there is no lighting created or set up in your model. And it really makes a huge difference to have some lighting settings in your model to be able to see the interiors, especially in a ray trace mode. So the guide does have a few different ways, and under here under lights, you can open the lights panel, and you can also set up or control some of the lighting controls there, but the best way to generate lights is to go under render tools. There is all these tabs related to lighting. One of the very effective one, of course, you can do the spotlighting for specific locations and for ceiling lighting, but the rectangular light is really good to, and this has been used here, for example, to be able to set up lighting in a certain kind of location. So for example, I'll just try to kind of zoom in here beyond this wall. And as you can see here, you can set up lighting to go a rectangular lighting, and we'll give you a continuum of one direction kind of lighting. It really kind of it's a nice trick to light interior spaces. So it's used this way. I will send you the after the class, I will send you the file with all the lighting and rendering setting for the house itself, so you can explore it on your own time. But we don't have time to wait for ray traced images at this point. So I'll just leave it to you to explore that. The one thing I can say is that for rectangular lighting, it's useful if you want to do it parallel to the side, change the C-plane first to the side. And this way, when you create your rectangular lighting, it's easy to snap to. And what do we have here? What snaps do we have here? So there, and we have the end and the near and all that. I can change that to ghosted view, so I can see a little better, and I can create a lighting that is snapped, and I don't need to have any. So this is the width and this is the height of my lighting, and that just generated that light. That's rectangular light, and as you can see, I can move it. It's that lower level here, and I can move it to be in any location. So it could be floating somewhere, and it's really best to generate actually a new layer. So we can have a new layer, and let's call it lights. And in it, we can have sublayers such as the rectangular. And we can have the under, oh, let's go to layer one here. Let's go to layers. Oh, you can change the rectangular. And so my light now is actually placed in the proper layer, and that helps if I want to turn it off or on. So it's kind of easy. And now that if I look inside, you'll see where is my light. Select under rectangular, if you go select objects, this is where the light is, as you can see, and it's floating there, and it just really gonna create, you know, a better effect for the lighting here. So, for example, let's just go and do rendered. And as you can see, the light is really strong and bright. If we don't have it, I like turned the layer off, and you can see this is on. So, so the light itself is very strong. So you can select the light, and under properties for the light itself, this is the second icon. You can change the intensity to make it lower if it is very intense, and that will reduce the intensity of the light. But again, this is more important, the lights, when you are actually creating ray traced. So under ray traced image, this will be more you know, effective with lights in the interiors than without. You can use the rectangular light to do like a ceiling kind of or light coming from the ceiling, which is also very useful. And as you can see, it takes time for the ray trace to cook here. But that really gives you an idea about, you know, how to access or set up different lights, and more details are in the guides that you can use to generate lights, interior or exterior lights, to help create a better scene. Any questions in relation to rendering in general, or yeah, or lighting or anything related to that topic? Have you all tried to, any of you have tried to create renderings with Rhino before? Yeah. Or do you use a specialized software that you export your geometry to create the renderings? No? Haven't tried the renderings with Rhino? Do you typically use the render mode and capture the image there and use it in your presentations?
Yeah, when I was doing it, I just will capture to file and then Photoshop it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is really pretty common, yeah, practice. And just try to capture it at high resolution. That's, you know, the one thing.
Yeah.
But if you add textures, if you add lighting, you can really come into really nice kind of set of images. So that's something to pay attention to.
Yep.
Any questions before we move on to the drawings? Yeah, no? So all good? I'll go back to rendered mode here. And yeah, so one more topic that is very, very important is to generate some drawings and be able to print it to scale as well. As an architectural drawing as well. In this guide, actually, it uses section tools to create dynamic sections, but this is not, we're not going to cover any plugins in this course just because of the setup. And we didn't have the opportunity to use the lab. So instead, I will just basically jump into the layout section. And we did really talk a little bit about different ways to use clipping planes and to use a section command to extract some 2D data. So that's still a valid way to do it within Rhino. And the only down side to it is with section command, for example, is we'll create a static section for you. It doesn't update with model changes, but you might not need that. Clipping planes, of course, are really good because if you change the model, the clipping plane is there, and you can really create decent sections using the clipping planes. The only thing, it's only a raster image, and you can't really extract the 2D information or the vector drawing out of it. There is the Make 2D to extract some of the drawings as well. But how do you organize, or if there is a way, what is it, a way to organize your drawings and all your models in a paper space? And the way to do that is to create what we call layouts. If you go there, the plus sign next to the different viewports, as you can see, we have the back perspective here, but we have top, front, right. If you click on the plus, and you will have a menu that shows up, you can do new layout. And in your layout, you can name it. So you can say Cliff House Project, or you can call it anything you want. This as a title for your layout, or Cliff House 01 as your first layout. This is, the size of your paper. You can use any units for it. It doesn't have any bearing on the units of your model itself, but this is standard A4, and how many details you want initially in your layout. This can be changed easily, so it doesn't matter. You just go OK. And what happens is that you get one detail, and by default it's taking the top view. And you can see that you can click on the border of it, and I can click on any of the widgets here to say I want a smaller or a bigger kind of detail within my layout. The nice thing about it, if you double click inside it, it's basically like a Rhino viewport. So you can start to pan, or you can even change the view to be to set it to any of our views. So if we want the back perspective, we just set it to the back perspective, and it really does show the back perspective. We can also change the view to be rendered, or we can zoom in, and until we are happy with the view, and then we can double click outside, and now the detail is within our paper showing our model rendered. Again, anything you want to change within the detail itself, and this rectangle is called detail. You double click inside it, and this is basically another viewport inside Rhino. You can change it to whatever thing you want, but since we already have a few views that are set, and we probably want to use maybe the back perspective, that will change it to the back perspective if, and the animation is going, no, that's actually, the back perspective is not what I wanted, is the front one. So set the view to the entrance perspective, and it's going to change our view to the, did it? Oh, it's taking a bit of time because it's going to render the view to rotate, and the transition from one to the next is taking some time. This feels like it's gotten a bit stuck there. So yeah, that's really just another viewport that you can change there, but I'm having a bit of a delay here. If you look at the guide itself, it really details also the steps when you can do all these things. Yeah, just just to start over here, to create a layout, you go to the plus and the new layout, you say house 01 and say OK. And that by default just puts any number of details to start with. But this is what the detail is. Basically, you think of it as a Rhino viewport that is locked within the paper space that we can also set to scale. So we can double click inside it, and that would be a regular viewport. And we can even change certain kind of things. For example, we can change the C-plane to be our top C-plane. And if you go plan, and that will just align it with the plan view. So that becomes our plan for our model. We can even set the view to be, for example, pen, and that becomes the top view of our model. So just taking a little bit of time here to calculate the pen. And you can add any number of details to show the top view, the side view, the elevation, and perspective. And you can set each one of them to be any number of viewports or display modes. And just wait for the pen. And the nice thing about the pen is you don't have to run make 2D to be able to extract all the lines, because the pen will calculate that for you. So that's computing the drawing data for it, and usually the first time you calculate it, it takes a little bit of time. It's taking way longer than the usual self, so that's getting me a little bit worried. So let's wait a little bit. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, I just also want to hear from you if you have used the layouts or the print options in Rhino before. To print PDFs, for example. That's the pen, and I can pan the view to maybe be only that part of the model. And if you double click outside and click on the border here, I can select, for example, the edge points, the 2 edge points, and make my detail a little bit smaller here. I can click on the side as well to just make it enough for my model. However, I might want my top view for the model to be to some scale, right? So if you go under the properties, where's my properties here? And under detail, you can see here a setting on the left about the scale value. 1 millimeter is equivalent to 0.2, so 1 to 200 almost. So if we do this, this is scale 1 to 200. So basically, if I just make this a little bigger here, and from that side, so this is scale 1 to 200. And if I don't want that scale to be messed up, I just need to press the click on the border, which is the detail itself, and check the locked. And this will help lock the scale of the model. I can double click outside, and now my model has a detail here that is a scale 1 to 200, and it's a top view. When you are in a layout view, you can call any command. For example, you can call dimension them, and you can actually create the dimensions in layout view. It's really recommended that you generate a new layer and call it, for example, I'll call it I want to rename it. Let's just make it a little wider. It's not allowing me to name it. It's called layer 1. Okay, we'll keep it layer 1, but let's just do the dimensions there. Oh, I'm in the middle of a command. That's why it didn't let me. I call it dimension, and then make it my current layer. And now I can call dimension command, and I can really create my dimensions within the model space. I still can snap to my model. So for example, if I want, to just dimension that part, I can do that. But as you can see many times, the dimensions might be too small here. So you can always click on the dimension itself, and under properties in the dimension, you can adjust the height to be, for example, 2.5. And just make sure that you also change the arrows to be 2.5 scale to be able to match up with the with this. So this way that I have my arrows and my dimensions. If you haven't changed your default style or created a style with this new setting, a new height, then you'll have to change it to every one. So I'll have to do the height 2.5 here and do the arrows to be 2.5 to be matching to the other dimension. As you can see, these dimensions are not in model space. So if I go to my perspective, I don't see any dimensions created in model space. They are strictly in layout space, which is nice. But you can still create your dimensions in model space, and they still can show within your layout space as well. So that's not a problem. If you want all your dimensions to have these settings, you can go under default and say edit the style, or create your own style of, say, for example, this is a millimeter architectural, and it has its own setting, which is a height of 3 and a model space scale. And you see how the arrow is 3 as well. And this way you can have all your dimensions following that particular style, and it doesn't use it uses a specific arrow style, which is that slash, and it doesn't use any decimals. So you can set it up to be whichever you want, and you can save your style and use it later. I can edit my style if I click on edit style, and that opens up the style, and it tells me what I want to do. If I want to certain kind of scale for the model space. But as you can see, the arrows here and the tick, the arrow type is a tick here. You can change it to whatever you want and go okay, and that saves that style for you, that you can use it throughout. So this is how you can do the dimensioning of your model. You can change the location of your dimensions as well. So that's all up to you. Now we know that the scale here is 1 to 200. So we can use text command. Again, this is all in layout space, and say top 1 to 200, and have it here and just change the height of it to be 10. Yeah, just relocate my title to whatever I want. I can just make it maybe 8 or 7. Yeah. So you can add text, you can add dimensions, you can work within your paper space or layout space, and you can add more details. So here, if I'm in detail, if I click on the down arrow, I can say add a detail, and I can just basically add a detail and double click on it. I can change to be set the view to be the we have the back perspective, for example, but let's say I want to set the the elevation. So I'll set the C-plane to be front, and I'll just run the plan command, and that really shows my elevation here. I'll just basically double click outside and make my detail a little bit wider here. So I can zoom in, double click inside, center it. But what I can do is just use the scale. So I double clicked outside, click on the border itself, and now I just want that to be 1 to 200 as well. And that scale will match my top. I'll double click inside, just try to kind of center it here, and double click outside. I'm clicking on the border so I can lock my detail here, and this way I don't mess it up by accident or zoom in to change the scale. I'd want to change the this to be perhaps, I don't know, you can do it shaded. But you can also, make it Arctic, any kind of display mode, and you can also obviously do a pen as well. Now, this is a front view. I'll just create one more detail here. Of course, you can create any number of details. I create one more detail that I will have it as a perspective, and I'll make it rendered view before I try to print it. So add detail. And now I'm adding a new detail here. And I'll double click inside, and I'll set the view to be the back perspective. Zoom a little bit in here. And change the mode to perhaps rendered. Okay. Now I have all my paper, details, and you can add all the text, all the information, names, or what have you. Once you are ready to do that, you can go and say print. Print basically print, a PDF, or there are some other formats, but it really ensures that you are printing to scale here and you have all your details like that. If you want a border surrounding some of these details, you can simply add in paper space a rectangle. So all the commands kind of work, or some of them at least. So I want a rectangle to surround both my elevation and my top view. And if you go and do print now, you can see that now there is a border created around them. Of course, you can double click here and say run clipping plane command, and perhaps, clip your model to show just part of it. And I'm just gonna move just vertically. As you can see, you can show more of it based on which part you want. So this is more of a kind of section view because I have my clipping plane. You can click on the clipping plane itself and hide it if you don't want it to show. But as you can see here, that this became, you know, a section perspective kind of view. And this is how you can really use your viewport or inside the paper space and set it up to whatever you want. I can just do, I'm clicking inside and go run plan command. And this is basically becomes like a section inside my paper view. And yeah, that's really in a nutshell how you can set up layouts and how you can set them up to a scale. Again, I could have select that and set it to be also 1 to 200 and just lock it. And now all my details are scaled to 1 to 200. Any questions related to layout or printing? There are a lot more details to layouts and how to set up the layouts, and this is really good resource here, that link. It's a detailed tutorial here that show you how to create the layouts, how to control them, and also there are some video tutorials here to show you how to do all the different parts, or you can go through it all as one big webinar. But you know, things like how to control the line type, the thickness, the you know, all the different things about the units within the layout. This is a really good resource that I highly recommend that you go through it if you're interested to learn more about the layouts. Any questions, discussions, thoughts? Is it clear? Is this a, you know, fairly obvious workflow for generating the layouts? Yeah, so there is a lot more integration between the Rhino viewport and you know, how you all the commands you run, all the display modes, and the layouts and paper space in Rhino. If there are any confusions, any questions, of course, you can all go with a follow-up. There is nothing like using it in real project, and then you will know what you're probably missing. So yeah, that's pretty much covers the drawing part of you know, producing drawings and to scale. And the section tools plugin is basically you know, help you generate a more dynamic kind of sections, and it can be really useful. But you can use the clipping planes, you can use the make 2D and section commands to generate the drawings, and you can place them somewhere. And why don't we just try that part? So for example, if I was here and I did make 2D, and you know, just select everything. And okay, now I will just generate the make 2D, which extract the 2D drawing here out of this view, and basically project it into the world XY plane. So let's just keep an eye on where the information goes there. So let's wait for it because it's quite involved and there are quite a few objects there. I just wanted to show you if you have a drawing or line drawing within your model or within your model space somewhere, you can also zoom or select that part and have it be featured within your as you can see it's right there, right? So if I go and say world, set up my seaplane to be world top and go plan, I will see this as being the 2D line drawing of my perspective. But I can easily go to my house here and I'll change that to be focusing on the drawing itself. So I'm just gonna set the view here just for ease. I set the seaplane to be the world top plane and do plan. Am I here? Am I inside my view here? Oh, I wasn't allowed to do that because I had a lock. So again, so I messed it up a little bit here. Okay, now if I select my detail, what did I do there? Okay, so inside there, I can change my, let's make sure that the detail itself is not locked. So under properties, under the detail itself, it's not locked. So if it's not locked, then I can change that. Double click inside it, change to set the view to be, I set the seaplane to be the world top, and I'll run plan command. And this will, and also I'll change that to just wireframe. And as you know, there is also what we just created, which was the under layers, I've undone the make 2D work as well. So let me go back to my perspective and set the view to be, where is the named view? Named views. Let me just do this and do make 2D again. And select the objects, press enter, okay. I just want to generate my make 2D here. And this way I have my drawing somewhere in my model place. It doesn't have to be exactly in any location, but I can zoom to that location. That's the idea. That's what I wanted to show, and be able to put it as part of your layout. So we're waiting for it to generate. Yeah. So yeah, once you lock your view, then it did generate. It's right here now. And if I go back to my house, as you can see, there it is. I'm just going to move it a little bit away from the model itself and zoom in it to show it. And you can see this is the 2D line drawing, and this is actually a vector drawing that you can select on it. You can delete some of the parts that you don't want to be showing, and this becomes your detail. And double click outside. I just can move this a little bit, and now this is the in paper space. I was able to zoom to the Make 2D. Those we created with using the pen, and as you can see, the quality here is the quality of the pen itself drawing. While with Make 2D, you might have better control over the line width and all the details, as you can see here. So, you know, anything you create within your model space, you can zoom into it and be able to show it here in the detailed view or the layout view. Okay. This pretty much like covers most of you know, what's available in terms of functionality for the 2D and the printing within Rhino environment. Okay. Do you all still have a bit of energy left in you that we can do a little bit of perhaps I don't know, 3D printing, how to prep a model for 3D printing, and maybe a couple of features for Rhino 7? Yeah. All right. So let me close this. Let me open the Rhino 7 beta. And actually, you know, there is some prototyping here about the laser cutting and how to unroll some of the parts of your model. And 3D printing is always a little bit challenging. Let me just open one of the models here. And okay. So I'll put that back here up, and let's look at the layers, and let's turn on the perhaps the loft. Yeah. So if you have run Rhino 7, one of the main additions is this subdivision modeling. And it is sort of NURBS based subd, but you can create continuation or continuity between the different parts or patches to subdivide you know, the surface. So you can create a very smooth surface that is essentially made out of multiple patches, but they have continuity between them, and they can continue seamlessly as though they are one NURBS surface. One of the really good and nice functionalities or commands within it is the multi-pipe command in Rhino 7. And this one is really nice because it used to be quite challenging to be able to do it within NURBS. Let me show you how. Let me just take one of these surfaces, which is the roof, to the side, and be able to kind of show that in there a little bit easier. As you can see, these are just ISO curves basically. So I'll just turn off the ISO curves there. And that's my surface. And if I want to say, create some sort of a skeleton or some kind of a structure that runs through that surface, let's just divide that into 8 segments, and I'll extract ISO curves for that surface in the V direction along these points. The idea is to generate pipes that go through it, And those pipes, if they have the proper thickness that our 3D printer can handle, then we can basically print out the skeleton of our roof using this method. We do have the other curves, the border curves, so we can use duplicate border to extract these curves. And now let me hide the surface. So what we end up with are these lines that if I can quickly turn them into pipes, I can 3D print that. Traditionally, we used to use the pipe command, but it doesn't really work well with intersecting, the Boolean union, the whole thing into one big poly surface. Well, if you use Subd multi-pipe, you can select all these curves and press enter, and then you can set up the radius to be 0.0, whatever, like how do we want it to be, 5 centimeters. And cap the ends, we don't need that, we want it to be smooth, and set it up to 0. As you can see, these pipes have been nicely created. You see the joints here. Even if I zoom here down there, as you can see, all these are made out of these Subd faces. I'm hitting Control Shift to be able to select those individual faces, basically. And you can do a modification or add details so easily with a Subd object. But most importantly, now it created really clean one Subd that I can turn into a mesh by using mesh command. And you select the Subd, press enter, and that opens up where you can, define, for example, the minimum edge length or any other details to create your mesh. And the important number to notice here is the number of polygons. You see them up there, which is 933,000 here, roughly. So you need to know what your 3D printer can handle in terms of like mesh count or polygon count. Let's assume that you have really good tolerances within your 3D printer. Now the mesh has been created, and I'm just moving it away from my Subd, and just so that we can know that this is a good mesh and one closed mesh that can be 3D printed. We will test it with show edges command, where you select your mesh and press enter. And the important thing to notice here is the number of naked edges and number of non-manifold edges. More importantly is the number of naked edges. If you have naked edges in your model, then it doesn't 3D print very well. So now we can see that this is a really good mesh that we can use for 3D printing if the tolerances of our 3D printer allows that kind of thing. The multi-pipe under Subd, to create a multi-pipe Subd with certain thickness, is really useful if you have a building and you have all the, say, the windows, vertical, horizontal membranes set up, and you want to just 3D print the skeleton itself. You can use the curves to add the multi-pipe, and it will generate very, very clean Subd surface, and then you can turn it into a mesh and 3D print it very quickly. Very nice for exploring kind of freeform shapes as well. So there you have it, really nice functionality. The Subd itself as a poly surface is it's not a polysurface. It has multiple faces. It's in it. There is a lot of commands here. You can like loft. You can use loft to create the sub-D from curves or sweep. So it has a lot of the same ways of constructing a polysurface to construct the sub-D. If you press Tab, it turned it to what we call it the box mode, and it really helps you modify your sub-D. So if I turn the control points on here, for example, I just need to kind of zoom right there to be able to kind of rotate around it nice. So if I want to kind of thicken that part a little bit, simply moving some control points for the sub-D itself. It's not allowing me to, so I can just select some of the faces here, move them. And of course, just press tab, you can see that I was able to, you can use the smooth mode to move some of the stuff here, but you can start to modify and thicken certain parts of your model just by selecting some of the faces. But you can see that the nice thing about it is you don't lose the continuity that you have between the different parts of your polysurface, and really very, very effective way of smooth modeling of your whatever model you want to create. If it has some complexity, then this might be a really good way for you to do it. You can, for example, extrude faces. So if you want to generate some other details, for example, I'll just select this, and just using the gumball, you can start to extrude and start to create, as I'll just select both of them and extrude together, just so that it didn't let me. Just I'm selecting the proper one. Yep. And you will see that you can start to create details real quickly, and you can expand on your sub-D. It's very hard to do that with NURBS, but with sub-D modeling, this is extremely powerful functionality. Yeah, and there is a lot of additions and changes. The rendering is the ray tracer is much more smooth and faster, and you can really create a lot better kind of views. That's, I think, it's rendered view here. All in all, I think you can see all the new functionality as well that for Rhino 7, and yeah, and we're very excited about it as well. So, but the one functionality that I think is very, very effective is the multi-pipe. It used to be a great pain to do in using Rhino and NURBS, so I thought I'd show it to you. All right, I think that's all there is. We used our time to the fullest. And that's the last few minutes of the last class. And of course, it's been great pleasure to have that journey with all of you. I feel like I know you all really well now, and really look forward to see what kind of projects, what kind of things that you come up with using Rhino or any other model, or for that matter. Some of you might be interested in even expanding some of the tools and developing your own tools. So it's all great.